Welcome to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gann, the podcast for people-centric leaders, business owners, and HR professionals who know that people are at the heart of business success. Join me and industry experts as we explore the key aspects of building a thriving company, sharing cutting-edge strategies, impactful insights, and the latest trends to help you ignite your business growth. It's time to rev up your leadership, rev up your success. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Rev Up Your Business. Today, my guest is Luki Danukarjanto. Luki is a career coach and the founder of Focus.Inspired. He is what he calls himself a soft skills guy. As a career coach, he found his purpose in helping others find theirs. He works with young professionals 18 to 35, especially newcomers, international students, and children of immigrants looking to level up their careers and themselves. Luki is a former management consultant with over a decade of experience in Deloitte's supply chain transformation group and a leader of their undergrad campus recruiting program for tech consulting nationally. He's a published author of SWIKE, Stuff I Wished I Knew Earlier. And we'll probably learn some of those tips as we get into our conversation. It's a series of books, and he runs a SWIKE podcast of the same name and releases weekly YouTube videos. You'll often find him at post-secondary institutions and companies around Toronto teaching, providing career coaching, job search guidance, and elevating education through soft skills learning. We're going to focus on the younger generation of employees, the Gen Zs, and seeking jobs and businesses. So join us as we talk about top Gen Z talent, strategies for long-term success. Welcome, Luki.
Thank you so much, Hilda, for having me on. So I'm excited for this conversation.
You and I met many years ago, and we talked about our particular passions and interests. And I thought it would be really helpful for business owners and HR professionals to hear from somebody who has dedicated his life to really helping young people and immigrants and people who are immigrants who want a career progress get to a point where they can make a difference and get in the workforce world. So I thought this would be great for you to come and share your perspective.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm excited to be able to share my thoughts and insights. And hopefully you don't have too many tough questions for me.
Well, I always like to say you're an expert and you have it in here. So any tough questions is really part of just the dialogue that we're going to have. So share a little bit from your work what you do to help young professionals prepare to get ready to show their best when they're looking for a job opportunity.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I call myself the soft skills guy, right? I know we had a discussion off air about soft skills isn't a good word because it seems like it's not even important. So I like to use the term human skills, and I think you have another term for it as well.
Yeah. Like whenever I hear that word soft skills, they're not soft. They're really, to do it well, you really need to continuously gain more confidence and ability. So I like to kind of neutralize it. I like your human skills, but I like to think there are technical skills that you need for your job, but there are also non-technical skills. And these are the human skills that really help build connection and relationship and trust.
Yeah. And the way that I've categorized it is human skills is kind of the broader piece where you have the whatever you call soft skills, non-technical skills or whatever. You have also these job search skills, which unfortunately in this day and age, you got to know them too. And then also life skills, which I consider things like mental health, physical health, spiritual health, and even social health and financial health, right? Those are things that are not really under hard skills or soft skills or however you slice them, but they are something that every successful human should know about in order to get things. So, but yeah, in terms of being able to help those folks, then I really take a look at each and every one of those human skills. Where are they and where do you want to be, right? So my simple approach is a very easy what, why, and then how, right? So like normally there's Simon Sinek's start with why, but then the question is why what? Right? So
Yeah,
that's
you
why I
need to
start
know
with,
what you're starting to know why
yeah.
you're.
And I start with what, just because then you go into the why. So what is it? You want to be successful in the workplace. You want a promotion. You want a job because you moved halfway across the world or whatever it is. Once you have a good sense, then why? Because sometimes it's for the younger generation, it's because my mom and dad are making me, which is not a great reason and doesn't really motivate folks as much as this is something that when I was growing up, I thought I'd be contributing as a doctor, engineer, accounting, lawyer, like those traditional career paths, versus some of the more recent, like kind of Gen Z ones where I want to be an influencer, YouTuber, TikToker type of thing, which seems like that's the going career path for folks. So I'll basically take them through that and help them understand, which I think you're definitely doing with your folks in terms of helping them with a bit of self-awareness, understanding where they are right now. And well, if you want to be a CEO, a philanthropist, whatever, these are some of the paths that you can take to get there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that how is like there's an infinite number of hows. So we work with each person just to help them get there. So that's at the highest level how what I do with folks and how to help them.
Do you find in your conversation, I know you kind of shared it earlier, do you find in your conversation that sometimes with immigrant families, uh, the people that would come to you, it was my parents told me. I don't know how many conversations, well, I do, but I had conversations with staff who said, I'm going back to school because I want to do this. My parents wanted me to be an accountant, but I'm going back to school. Well, a good example was my parents wanted me to get into the computer, and
Mm,
I just hate it. I want to be a transportation planner, and
mm.
I'm going back to school now to get my degree in it. I've saved up enough money and enough courage to tell my parents.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, and for me, one of the big core foundational elements is like mindset and
Yeah,
being able
yeah.
to one some things like imposter syndrome. That's a huge thing that happens because if you wanted to or didn't want to go into that career path, sometimes you see all these accomplished professionals out there, and you're like, how did I end up here? Like I must be in the wrong room. Everyone's so much better, smarter. They'll find me out eventually, right? And if there's another path where they're going down whatever the doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, and they're like, mom and dad, I don't really want to do this. And if they have the courage to have those conversations, that's a lot better than. But they become difficult conversations. And if you're part of this stereotypical Gen Z that doesn't have those social skills, well, if you don't have social skills from interacting with other people, how can you possibly have those social skills to have those dynamics with mom and dad and successfully navigate that, right? So those conversations are definitely ever present, and it's at different stages. So sometimes they've gone through the motion and they've achieved that, and they're like, "Is this it? I'm a doctor. I'm an engineer. I'm an accountant. I'm a lawyer. Like, shouldn't I be happy? Shouldn't I be successful? Shouldn't I be
Yeah,
whatever?"
yeah.
And then they aren't. Versus like early in their career, because they couldn't land a job or they really can't get through the course load or whatever it is. Yeah, there's so many different conversations at different points in time for folks. But yes, definitely part of the conversation.
And you allude to, life cycle,
Hmm.
and you allude to the essence of those, well, let's call them human skills today.
Sure.
You allude to those human skills, and part of it is conversation, and it's developing relationships. And those people who are younger didn't have the opportunity to practice conversations. The computers came and you could be sitting in three different rooms and playing a game together. And because you're playing a game, you're not having conversations about, so what's it like, or how, are your parents on your case about going to med school or whatever? So yeah, they don't have the practice, they don't have the comfort to build those human skills from a communications perspective, from a, you know, to really do that. And I like how you use the word imposter syndrome. Literally last night, I had to write an article, and I thought, what would I write the article on? And then I decided imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And it's called imposter syndrome, myth or reality. And I had a strategy to say, look, it is a mindset. You are
Yeah.
not an imposter. You are just building your skills, and everybody else you think looks better than you. But we all in our mind are going through a lot of things. So
Yeah.
shift your mindset. You're not an imposter, essentially.
Yeah, but on that topic, like your mind is so powerful and amazing that what you think often is your reality, right?
Oh,
So
it
for that
is.
person, like it's absolutely reality. For everybody else, it's just like, oh, yeah, you're doing a good job, you're fine.
Yeah,
Versus you,
yeah,
you
yeah.
just it. So definitely mindset is a super important element to have. But just on the topic of that whole like Gen Z's not necessarily having the soft skills because they couldn't interact, they're too busy. With their thumbs, their games, their texts, and all that sort of stuff, right? It's one of those things where we use these as broad generalizations,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
But definitely, like there were those types of folks who existed in my generation too. They were socially awkward. I could probably put myself in that camp where I wasn't good at conversations,
Yeah.
in being
Yeah.
able to talk to people and all that sort of stuff. And the whole reason I'm on my journey is I wish someone taught me these when I were younger. Hence the
It's your
stuff I
it's your
wish I knew.
it's your stuff I wish I knew earlier,
hu-
right?
100%. Yeah. So to me, these would have been like, if I had that foundation, I would have had such a different life. Now, I'm thankful for everything that I've had and gone through because I don't know if I would have learned it as well if I hadn't gone through the trials and tribulations. But yes, and it's one of those things where they haven't necessarily had the environment or training. But my belief is all of these skills can be learned, right? And doesn't have to take a lifetime. Now, well, the reason why they made the distinguishment between hard and soft skills is like soft was a little bit harder to measure, right?
Mhm.
And and it's all contextual. So one other name that I give is context specific skills, right? Because I can say I'm a good communicator, right? But if I compare myself to like a Barack Obama, like no way, I'm not even in the
Yeah, yeah,
same
yeah,
league
yeah.
as that. But and when in public, I might be a great communicator, but with some stranger that I haven't met before, then am I a great communicator? So, and you take those with any of those soft skills, which is maybe productivity, leadership, like teamwork, and all that sort of stuff. Just because you're good at one doesn't mean that you're good at others. So it's one where I think an important element is not to overgeneralize and say the Gen Z and put every new candidate, new applicant with that same brush, because there are people with different attributes, and you just have to be able to filter out to say, okay, what is it? What is the type of person that interacts well with you, with your organization,
Mhm.
with the type of work environment there, right? There's a huge thing for companies on like the return to work policies, right? So prior to COVID, you were in the office, right?
Yeah.
Now with Gen Zs, it's an expectation of flexibility. I come in at whatever time and do that. Whereas in my generation and prior, it's like 9 to 5. You're here in the office, right? Now, does that matter for you? And is that important enough for you to filter out some of these candidates, which might be the best for the job, but just might not be here in the building for the same amount of time? So these are all just more discussions, not just even self-awareness, but like I'll call it organizational preference awareness in terms of what
Yeah.
type of person thrives most in your organizational environment. But I'd
And I
love your
think
thoughts.
that's totally agree. I think first of all, just to remind, even though we're talking about younger people, we should not stereotype. And the example I gave is more likely to have more difficulty communicating because of that generation's lifestyle.
Mhm.
Many, not all, were using, were playing games, and it's great, but again, it has its impact, right? So definitely don't stereotype. And I created that rev up concept, and the U in rev up stands for uniqueness. And
Mm.
to me, we're all unique. we're a combination of when we were born. So whether it's Gen Z or millennials or veterans, there's probably a few still around. We were a product of our when we were born, our age, our educational, our family structure. It's nothing like no two people are exactly alike because you can just change one factor, where you went to school, what year you were born in, and now you're unique. So I think I agree with you. We have to have that dialogue. You have to have that dialogue with your candidate that you're looking at and yourself and your organization. And you need to flow with the times. Post COVID, the world, not just young people, but the world wants to have more flexibility, more fluidity. Saying I have to be here 9 to 5, 3 days a week just because you decided it without any
Right.
scientific basis, that's not good enough. What you need to hear from your organizations, you're flexible. There's certain things you're inflexible, fine, but you can't be 100% inflexibility, right? If everybody has to be in Wednesday afternoons because you have a mass global meeting, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But don't say they have to be in 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. That doesn't make sense. But being there together one afternoon, once every 2 weeks, may be important from a team building perspective. So that may not be negotiable, but other things should be negotiable, right?
For sure.
So I guess one of the things we should talk about is, what advice would you give candidates who are trying to get hired? So many business owners, organizations don't want to hire you without any experience. They want at least 1 to 2 years experience. So how do you get the 1 to 2 years experience to start a job?
Yeah. It's the entry-level role with 1 to 2 years of experience. Wow,
And
how's that work? Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't work as an entry.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few ways that to approach this. So for me, for the younger students that let's call it, you're about to graduate in a couple of years,
Yep.
then you have a little bit more runway, and I would leverage the time in university, in college, to look to get that experience, because college, university is great, but a lot of it is theoretical, a lot of it is in classroom, and it's the real life application that's helpful. So if you have an internship, a co-op,
Yeah.
work integrated learning, take advantage of those, find those, ask for those, demand for those, and then do it. And if you don't, well, you can always do it yourself, right? Part-time jobs, summer internships, or whatever. Get that into yours. Now, for the folks that are basically, okay, school is the end, they don't want to continue with master's or PhD, and you unfortunately didn't take the time to have those skills, well, there's no time like the present. I have a post which I say that people hire for 3 reasons: fit, skills, and experience.
Yeah.
Right? And fit means, do I like you? Skills means, do I believe you can do the job? And experience is, have you done it before?
Yeah.
So there's this notion that if you've done it before, you can do it again, which kind of makes sense. And most people think that that is why people hire. But to me, the fit is the most important part, right? Because if you've done it a lot before, and I believe you can do the job, but I don't like you, you'll never get hired.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I like you and I believe you can do the job, even if you haven't done it before, I might give you a shot, right?
Yeah.
So I would go back to that, the soft skills, the interactions, network, build those relationships, and showcase, like, this is how I can add value. And sometimes it's as simple as you having a conversation, a coffee chat with someone, and let's say we were having this conversation, and then and I'm a student and I have no experience and I'm looking for potential opportunities. Then I could go back and say, Hilda, I appreciate the conversation, and I was so excited about the conversation, I decided to do this. Right. And what this is depends on the conversation, but it could be like a bit of research. It could be like a mock up of something you talked about. It could be whatever it is. And then you'll come back and be like, whoa, like, this person, one, was actually listening to the conversation, took the advice and did something with it. Like, that's the type of person I'd want to hire. right? Even if you theoretically did it 10 times before, if you don't come up with that extra value, then it's a little bit harder, right?
Yeah.
So, and that applies to me regardless of age, right? So even newcomers that are coming in, that would be kind of the best way that I would have for folks to do it. And there's a whole bunch of other things where you can volunteer, do side projects and things like that, different ways to showcase your skill. Because otherwise, then hiring is just based on hope, right? It's really risk management on, do I believe you can actually do what you've said that you've done on your resume, on your LinkedIn, in this interview? Or is it higher likelihood that this other person with more experience, more something could do it, right? But yeah, in a nutshell, those are a couple of things that I do. One is if you're young enough to try to get that experience right now. And if you're not, then build those relationships and try to have those, call it value projects is what I like to call them,
Yep.
to demonstrate that you can do the work, right? So what are your thoughts?
That's such good advice. And I think on the flip side of it, I would say to people who are looking at resumes, there are a lot of recruiters out there, and they look at the boxes and check the boxes off. But to me, when I look at a resume, I look at that uniqueness and that potential that a person has, and I look for future. So I look at that resume and say, this person is a future leader. This person can be a future whatever. And so when I read a resume, I don't look at, well, I want an entry-level person with 1 to 2 years experience. No, I do want that, but I want that person to be able to progress. And do they have that? And I remember being in an interview with one of my project managers. We were looking at these 2 students, and one was an A student. He had great credentials and stuff. And then this other one was taking 5 years to do her program. And I thought, okay, the guy shines because he's an A student, da 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 da. And he said, actually, I think I will go with this other candidate. And I said, why? He says, because she might have taken longer, but you notice she also worked part-time, and she worked at the keg. And I said, yeah. Well, think about all those life skills, those human skills that she developed in terms of organizational skills, putting the orders in at the right time, having satisfied customers as a goal, but when they're not satisfied, you're learning communication skills on how to make them more satisfied or less irritated or whatever. And I thought, you're right. She'll probably get more comfortable and integrated faster. He may do a better job in terms of the projects and stuff. So there's always little tidbits that you can glean from a resume, and to show extra projects really sets yourself apart. And I would also recommend that, yeah, when you're in those student days, go to events where there are seasoned, experienced people. Get to talk to them, because you may show that you shine, and you may be able to connect with them on LinkedIn or wherever, and in the future can stay connected, and they may be able to help you with your first steps in opening doors. Because oftentimes it's even once you're seasoned as an experienced worker, it's not what you know, it's who you know and how you can find a job through connections.
And I usually add to that where it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Because the challenge with something like LinkedIn, you have 500, 1,000 connections. But if you were to message any one of them, how many would actually know who you are, would remember where they met you, that sort of thing? Versus, can you actually cultivate and incubate those relationships? So my push for a lot of folks is to focus on the quality of relationships versus quantity. Right. And
for sure.
as the Scotiabank logo says, like, you're richer than you think.
Right.
Where even folks who are young or newcomers or whatever says, I don't have a network. Well, yes, you do. You've probably met people since you've been here, since you've been graduating, since in school. It's just a matter of like, oh yeah, what are they up to? Can I cultivate that relationship and level up the quality of that relationship? But as you said, it's a skill for someone in called the stereotypical Gen Z that didn't grow up with that. Like some of my teachers, like, well, what do I say? You mean I say hi to a total stranger and have a conversation? Like, really? Is that a thing? And yes. And
Well,
like anything, it's a skill, right? The more
if
that
you
you do it, the better that you get.
if you think of the gaming world, it's like you start, at level one, and
Yeah,
and the more you practice, you'll get to level two and three,
yeah,
and the goal is always doing that. Well, if you expect to be able to communicate effectively and be at stage, seven, well, you still have to get to one and two, start introducing yourself and getting comfortable. So
yeah,
think of it as a game. The more you use it, the practice, you get better, and you can go into the next level and the next level and the advanced level. So if you think from a gamification perspective, think of communication skills, building those as that, being able to be fluent, and to get to the top stages to
for
do
sure.
it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
We talked about candidates to help them, but I'm hoping, the managers and the educators and the HR people are listening. Let's focus now on what advice you would give to businesses and organizations when they're looking to hire. And I know recently you get to live your passion every day, and you're working in an organization where you can actually do more of the kind of coaching that you love to do.
For sure, yeah. So I recently picked up a role as head of recruiting and talent development for a fintech in the Toronto area, and we're actually in the process of creating like an internship, new grad, a young professionals type program.
Great.
And I used to do that in my old world at Deloitte as well, where I was heading up the undergrad campus recruiting program, very much involved in like onboarding and stewardship and training and things like that. So I've had, well, I guess at that time there were more like the Gen Ys versus the Gen Zs. But now, like a lot of the classes that I teach are on the Gen Z side. And so we're building programs to kind of support them. But the guidance that I'd have is similar to what we've alluded to before, is really, again, don't paint them with the broad brush as like all these Gen Zs, like they're all lazy, they have no soft skills, they have no this and that or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. So how can you determine what skills are most important for you, and how do you decide? Like your example with the person that worked at the keg, right? If it's customer service and communication and skills like that, right? Would that be better served with like a part-time job at a quick serve restaurant, or like getting a 4.0 in statistics, right? I mean, depending on what's most important, you're going to have to decide and what to look for, right? So it's understanding where the types of students, young professionals hang out, and then being able to attract them. They're looking for, as you said, flexibility, right? So these hard and fast rules where I know a lot of the tech startups before, if you had like a, what is it, like a beanbag chair and like a foosball table, then that would be the
We had a
attraction to
foosball table.
it. We have one too, but that was just more because the folks were interested in having
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
But it's a matter of like things like feedback, right? I think a lot of the Gen Zs are very instant gratification, instant everything. So the normal HR processes where I get conversation and feedback once a year, twice a year, like they want to know, okay, how am I doing? How am I doing now? How about
Yeah,
today? How about this week? Right?
yeah, yeah.
So building in those processes and showcasing that that's the stuff that you do. So really going back to that organizational awareness, like what is the type of candidate that would thrive in your environment, and
Exactly.
then going out and finding them. And then when they do land there and they say yes to your offer, well, building all of the appropriate constructs to help them. Because maybe people say that they're a little bit more needy, a little bit more entitled, but that's because when they were growing up, everything was like fast, right? Like you have like Amazon next day delivery, and some places like 1 hour delivery, right? And if that's what you grew up with, well then why can't you give me feedback tomorrow? Right?
Yeah.
Why do I have to wait 4 months until the next cycle, right? Those types of things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I mean, I used to share statistics when I was teaching people about communicating effectively, and I said that this younger generation, requires 7 touch points a week. And all of a sudden the eyeballs roll. What? I said, it doesn't mean you have to sit down and have an evaluation with them, but even just a hi, how are things going? That's 1 touch point. So it doesn't have to be deep, intensive. But think about it. Every time they went somewhere, they were given feedback on how they did. This is normal. It's not needy. It's just, it was their norm. So to go from getting, at the end of a baseball game, getting a softball game, getting a little bit of information of how they're doing, to getting nothing for months, that's a little bit like, that's not their norm. And one of the things we always talked about as our staff were coming in, we said, what is this newer graduation? We never labeled them as a Gen Y or millennials. What is this newer generation needing? And oftentimes we don't remember what is it like to start a new job. So you can't expect people to know that their lunch break is this time to this time, or that they're expected to stay a little bit past 5 o'clock if they want to show their wherever. What you need to do is provide some orientation and some ongoing onboarding to help people understand what is the expectations of a good, employee, and what is communicating. If you can't make a deadline, you should tell somebody that I'm going to miss this deadline because A, B, and C. What do I need to do? Because it may be 2 other managers are asking for deadlines the same day and you don't know what to do. So we need to educate our staff and our new staff, whether they're new to the world, to our country, new to our company, what the expectations is at our company.
For sure. And I know one of the other attributes that folks often put down to the Gen Z are like, they're more purpose driven. And that is that they relate to the work that they do and they understand the impact. But I also say it's they want to understand the purpose of things as well, right? So we were chatting before about like in-office policies, right? If I'm just in the office just because, like, that's not a good purpose. But if I'm in the office because the president's going to be in town and we should probably have a conversation, they're going to be available for a fireside chat, that makes sense to me, right? We have a big stakeholder meeting and the client wants us to be in the meeting. That's again a good thing. But if my team is completely remote and I'll be the only one in the office, but I'm still expected to be in, that's not a good purpose. And then it relates to all these other things. If this policy was in place, it was in place just because that's how we always did it. Like Gen Z doesn't appreciate that, right? They want to understand a little bit and understand a little bit that purpose. And to be honest, a lot of these practices should be just everybody, right? Those touch points, even with a Gen X baby boomer or something, they would probably appreciate it. They'd probably wonder like, why are you reaching out to me so often? But they probably would get used to it and wouldn't mind that, hey, you're actually interested in me and all that sort of stuff. Because to me, the best way to take care of an employee is to do that, just that, like make them feel like that you actually care.
Well,
and then everything surrounds around that. So
one of the things I like my stats. And so one of the things is when you show appreciation, in the word of Rev Up, it's valued. When you show that people make them feel valued, their productivity goes up by 68% of people really value a little bit of encouragement. And as a result of that, they're more productive and engaged because you gave them a pat on the back. So these are things that really do have meaning and stuff. So I think, you called it purpose driven, and I don't know if it's the same as corporate social responsibility. Is it the same or different?
Because it's similar.
Okay,
I mean,
because I think a lot of this younger generation really want to work for companies who really have a commitment to making the world a better place. The world a better place within the organization and externally. So fit is not just, do I like you, but fit is where the values align. Correct. And a recommendation to both people who are looking and people who are hiring is that look for the values to align, because again, statistically, when values don't align, and particularly candidates realize the values don't align, that they made a mistake or they were sold something and it wasn't true, they're gone within 6 to 12 months. Statistics will show you that the high percentage of people who just don't fit, don't align, the belief systems don't align, then they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah, and there are different levels of that purpose driven, where it could be like impact to society because they are like a sustainable, energy efficient company or that sort of thing, versus more like I understand my purpose and my impact that I'm having, even with something that's a little bit more like back office or not as sexy or something like that. Like I was chatting with someone who was like, we're in insurance. It's not a sexy business. But if you think about the purpose of insurance, it's to giving people peace of mind, right?
Exactly.
That if
Yeah.
something happens, they're taken care of, right? So playing with people's emotions and helping them to understand, like, this is the value that you provide, as you talked about it. In addition to being valued, also being able to demonstrate your value.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a little bit of that, and sometimes that lends itself to like the corporate social responsibility things, but a lot of that is marketing, where I'm at the homeless shelter, like serving food or something, or supporting like this cleanup of a park or whatever.
Yeah.
But is that like a marketing campaign, or do you truly live those values? Would be something
Yeah.
that you want to
Yeah.
consider for the organizations you're joining, or the people that you may be hiring.
Yeah, I think so important. I know that when my husband and I had our company, we got to a point in our company, both from a numbers perspective and financially. We said, okay, we can afford it now, and we want to give back to the community.
Hmm.
So, and to me, to us, community meant not just your geographical community. So we were based in Richmond Hill. We got involved in our United Way, but it's also your industry community. So again, we got involved in engineering and the alumni to which my husband graduated in his engineering degree. So to me, when you can give back and when you support your staff to give back, that again is creating something. And they were probably Gen Ys at that time. I don't think the Gen Zs were even born at the early stages of our company. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if we should focus on one more thing before we wrap up, and that's sharing any tips and strategies that you feel are key drivers for businesses to know in order to, find the top talent of those Gen Zs.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it would be starting internally and saying like, well, who do we have right now? Uh, where can we find more of those, right? And what you mentioned before a little bit on the values. Maybe there's like some of the demographical components of it too, but usually there's more like the psychographic part,
Yeah.
where how do they think, how do they behave, what do they do, and when you can kind of align yourself with organizations, be it like a student club or a professional organization or whatever, that kind of exude those values, those would be great candidates for you to have. And presumably the company should have like a referral program.
Yeah. Well, like
There's,
Deloitte had an amazing program. I know
yeah,
my niece went through the Deloitte program in her undergraduate, working in the summer and then building up for, by the time she had graduated, she had a job with Deloitte
yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And it's recognizing it proactively, because there's the right now it's a supply and demand, well, opportunity for employers, because there's lots of supply, just based on this market. But at some point, the pendulum will go the other way, where it'll
Exactly.
be
Yeah.
harder to get candidates. And you
Yeah.
want to start investing in that proactively, in the areas, the people that have those values, so that when you're ready, or the economy picks back up, and folks are going to be harder to get to join your organization, your name, your company, your organization is top of mind, because they were part of the community, like someone knows them, or someone speaks highly of them, right? Those types of things I
Hmm.
would be
Hmm.
hopeful. So I would start internally, and again, referrals, or just understanding where people came from, that were strong, and then trying to build relationships in those respective areas. Right?
Great. Yeah. You bring to mind a lot of different things for me, and I've shared some of those with the group today. But as a business, you need to reach out to find people for the future. And you need to think about, what is it that I need for my company? What kind of people I want to hire? And there will be people out there. We don't stereotype, but you should learn to understand what those stereotypes are, just from a trend point of view, not from a, oh, this is what the person is. I remember talking to somebody who was having difficulty with a 25-year-old in an office managerial type, office operations type role. And she was just throwing her, like, I give up. I'm never going to hire another 25-year-old. And I'm thinking, but you have to hire people at that age. So don't give up. Instead, understand what it is that motivates, that drives people of that age. And they're not all going to be the same. And you need to find the ones that just fit with your organization, has the right kind of belief systems, motivation, whatever it is, as you say, internally figure out what you need and then work towards creating it. So there are the right people for you out there.
Sure. Yeah, totally agree.
What's next for you, Luki?
For me, it's, I guess, twofold. Is one, like settling into my new role. So we have an amazing transformation ahead of us, and probably a lot of hiring that's happening. So for folks that want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out. And please don't do so just because you want a job, right? Please do so because you want to build a relationship. And if you want to geek out about anything, personal, professional development, human skills, non-technical skills, whatever we call them, if you want to do that, then feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And the second element would be to continue my journey on Focus.Inspired. So that is an organization that aims to elevate education through soft skills learning. And the whole point is, how can I implement more of the mindset, communication, social, like productivity, creativity, leadership, all that training into a normal person's growth trajectory, right? Insert into the school program, an after school program, like the Kumon of soft skills, if there's such a thing. How do we get folks to engage in that sort of stuff? Because that's the stuff that I wish I knew earlier. And the more that folks have it, I think the world would just be a nicer place. So that's my kind of utopian vision. So I have the Focus.Inspired Academy, which is your career confidence gym, where we take all these elements and put them into practice. Because knowledge and theory is nice, but actually going out there and putting into practice is better. So yeah, and probably another book in there, lots of more YouTube videos, and a couple more podcasts. We'll see how that goes. But yeah.
Well, I knew that I needed to have you on the show to share this perspective. I knew that passion when you and I first had our initial conversations. I knew your passion, and I love that you continue to foster that helping others really gain confidence in who they are. And that's part of those human skills, understanding those human skills so you can be your most confident self. And it so aligns with my values as people know who are part of listening to the Rev Up podcast. So how do we get a hold of you, Luki?
Yeah, so the best way would be find me on LinkedIn and make sure to connect instead of just follow, for those that know the functionality. Or you can find me, Luki@Focus.Inspired.com. Feel free to send me a quick email, right? And please avoid the spam and the scams. Thanks.
Well, thank you. What a wonderful conversation we have. I think it resonates with people who are looking for candidates for jobs and people who are looking for candidates. I think you've given advice that's helpful for both and to see both sides of it. And that was the goal for me, is to have people understand the two-sided coin of this hire, so to speak. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Hilda, for the opportunity. And yeah, thank you. And hopefully we'll have more conversations in the future.
I'm sure we will. Thank you. And for those of you who have joined us, if you love this session, give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in other episodes of Rev Up Your Business, Do subscribe and join us. Look forward to hearing and seeing you at my next podcast. Take it easy. Thank you for tuning in to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes. For more HR tips, strategies, and to learn how you can create a people-centric workplace, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.